Welcome to Legend of the Galactic Heroes, episodes 55 through 74. A casual overlook on what's been going on so far. For a 110 episode series, it's getting better and better and better as you go through it. It has not disappointed me. I doubt it ever will. When I left off, Yang Wenli has successfully defeated Reinhardt in a giant galactic battle, but it was stopped because the Galactic Empire was already invading the Alliance, and the Alliance called for a ceasefire. Thus, Yang had to hand over a victory to Reinhardt, which he knows that it was handed to him. And I'm sure he took a lot of offense to that. Other than that, it left off with Julian heading over to Earth with Poplin and the others, such as his own personal bodyguard, Mashengo. Speaking of Mashengo, they gave him some of the poorest dialogue. He just basically repeats himself that you cannot change destiny. Why do they do Mashengo like that? Julian is going to Earth to acquire information from the cult that lives there. And what a terrifying cult it was. They're a cult of people who are not afraid to die, who actually want to die because they want to go towards their god or whatnot. And Julian ends up finding out that everybody who's staying there, it has drugs put into their food unknowingly. And these drugs help with the brainwashing. Julian finds out after Poplin sees somebody with a reaction and identifies the drug. Afterwards, Julian and the team decide to stop eating, and they start suffering from withdrawal symptoms. This leads to the cultist wanting to take a look at Julian, at the doctor, and he refuses at first because he doesn't want to give away that he's going through withdrawal, or else he'd be injected with more of it. Regardless of that, he decides to go willingly to not raise suspicion. And at the same time, the Empire is also about to invade Earth to get to the cultists as well. It was a coincidence. And so they end up going to the doctor. Julian and Papa and the rest are there, or three of them are there. And they end up, Papa ends up getting impatient and exposing the doctor for what's being done to them with the drug. They get into a fight, and they start taking on the Earth cultists. Once the Empire goes in, there's a huge battle going on, and the Empire soldiers are shocked because these people are essentially sending themselves to the slaughter, as they're able to easily take out the cultists effortlessly. There's actually a funny part where one of the Imperial soldiers is shocked at this. It says he can't take anymore and takes off his helmet and say, "Why do you guys just give yourselves away to death?" Which was a mistake because then one of them sneaks up behind him and stabs him in the eye with a short sword. It's creepy to see how these Earth cultists are suicidal when they're fighting. And you can see afterwards, when they die, they're smiling because they see death as the final release. A good thing to look forward to demand, almost, you could say. Eventually, they start flooding, the Earth cultists start flooding the base, drowning the Imperial soldiers, and they end up just blowing up the entire base themselves, taking a lot of soldiers with them. The Empire retreats, and it's obvious that the higher-ups of the Earth cultists survive. They show them leaving afterwards. Julian survives. He manages to get the information he needed on the disc, and downloads it, erases it so that the Empire won't get to it, and they leave. And that was quite the journey. On the outside, Yang Wenli and Federica are trying to enjoy this now newly found retired life. They get married, they get a house, and they try to live peaceful lives. Yang Wenli is done with the military. He just wants to live an ordinary life with his wife. Unfortunately, he's part of something he's never going to be able to escape from. As you can see that the Alliance is surveilling him because they suspect that Yang Wenli's up to something, that he's going to want to seize power and overtake the Alliance. Which he could if he wanted to, but that's not the type of person that he is, at least at the moment. Because of this, he can't live a comfortable life. He doesn't like that he has to sneak his way to do certain things. And overall, he's just not enjoying it. This is not the life that they wanted to. They don't want to be going to buy some snacks and then be followed by a black car every single day. Eventually, Yang Wenli gets arrested because the Alliance starts to see him as a symbol of their own destruction. And rather than the Empire getting to Yang Wenli first, the Alliance decides to do it themselves, and they try to assassinate him. They try to kill him. Because of what happened, where there was a ceasefire, as I mentioned earlier. In that ceasefire, the Alliance surrendered to the Galactic Empire, and so Reinhardt became the supreme ruler of the whole universe, you could say. And the thing about Reinhardt is he is broken by the murder of Kitty Ice. He will never be able to. At this point, he has not been able to come to terms with it. It's been a couple of years now, and he cannot come to terms with it. Whenever it comes to making a crucial choice, or whenever it comes to thinking about a moral issue, he will always grab his amulet that has a picture of Kitty Heist in it, and some of his hair, as well as his sister. And he always says, if only Kitty Heist was still here, things would have been much different. Yang Wenli would have been defeated long ago. It's sad to see how broken Reinhardt is as a result of losing a man he was so dependent on, and that he loved so much. But now he is the supreme ruler, and he says, "Yes, I have this, but it's not. This isn't what I wanted. Kitty Heist was supposed to be there, and his sister is gone somewhere. I'm surprised they haven't not showed her for a long time. Even Rubinsky has already been showed recently, but Anna Rose is still off somewhere in a house, in the middle of nowhere in the forest. So now with Reinhardt as the supreme ruler, or Mein Kaiser." The Alliance does see that he is different from a lot of the other empires, Kaisers, or rulers, in that he is more moral. He's more fair. He doesn't go after civilians. He tries to always find the most just and moral thing to do, and he has great advisors. He has Hildegard von Mariendorf, who's an excellent advisor. But more than that, or maybe not more than that, but more effectively, he has Oberstein. Oberstein now at this point is starting to raise suspicions. For example, Mittermeier and Ruenthal, they now have second thoughts about Oberstein because they feel that he's pushing his own agenda through Reinhardt. And if you watch the meetings that they have, Oberstein has ideas that they're effective, but they're just not necessary. They're unacceptable to a certain extent. And they are things that Reinhardt wouldn't really want to do because they might involve something very harsh. But Oberstein is extremely intelligent, very, very wise, and all he manages to convince Reinhardt. And Ruenthal and Mittermeier see this as a bad thing. They think that Oberstein might be trying to overtake or have some kind of hidden agenda. Even Kitty Ice, when Oberstein gets first introduced, Kitty Ice didn't like Oberstein. He had him at gunpoint. But Reinhardt sees something in Oberstein. And Oberstein himself, I think his heart's in the right place. He just has a more harsher judgment than Reinhardt and Kitty Ice and Ruenthal and Mittermeier. And I do look forward to seeing what Oberstein does, because I think Oberstein could be my favorite character. Maybe even more than Yang Wenli, or at least tied. I just really like his character. But it's not looking too good for him because there's division going on between Oberstein and Ruenthal and Mittermeier. And of course, Rubinsky is hiding in the shadows, pulling the strings of instigation, and his plan is to try to cause a division between the Galactic Empire. He's still doing the same thing he was always doing before, and he's considered missing to the Empire at the moment. So who knows how that will progress. And so Yang Wenli, about to be assassinated, ends up getting saved because there are several parts within the Alliance that rebel, including the Return Rose. What are they called? The ones that are led by Walter. Return Rose, I forgot what it's called. Anyhow, this rebellion from the Alliance gets together and they save Yang Wenli. And they end up... Actually, it was Federica that saved Yang Wenli just in time from being shot. So it was good that they saved them. Other than that, there was a new issue going on with Isolan Fortress, and Yang Wenli wants to recapture it. And through his strategy and genius, he's able to trick some of Reinhardt's fleet commanders or admirals. And if you recall, way back in the beginning of the series, when Yang Wenli had abandoned the Isolan Fortress, he had placed a souvenir which they called Yang's souvenir, and the Empire didn't know what it was. They were just aware that something was in that base. And I find it hilarious that they didn't take that into consideration during the fight. And during the fight, Yang Wenli, I guess the irregulars, which is what he calls his side group that rebelled from the alliance, they end up formulating the plan of sending the admirals fake telegraphs about orders pretending to be Reinhardt. And at the end, I think it was two or three or four fake ones. That by the time Reinhardt gave his order, the admiral thought it was part of the prank or part of the trick. And Reinhardt is mad because he sees that they're ignoring his orders, though it's actually because of the tricks of Yang Wenli. And they wanted to try to entrap the trappers, and so the admiral's plan to leave Isilon base or fortress, and when Yang Wenli's fleet would come in, they would turn around and come back and get them. And if they did, they would win. And even Yang Wenli knows this. However, when Yang Wenli's fleet goes inside or goes towards this Isilon fortress, the Souvenir takes part here, which it was a program that shut down the Thor hammer, and so the Galactic Empire were shocked that they couldn't use it, and their system was overridden with a brand new password, which is something that Julian made. It's funny. It was related to T. And when as the Galactic Empire rushed back to the fortress, by that time Yang Wenli and his men had already entered, Yang Wenli's men had already entered the fortress, and Julian puts in the password, boots up the system, and shoots the Thor hammer at the Galactic Empire, forcing them to retreat. It was great how that happened. On the other side of the galaxy, you have Bukak, who went head to head against Reinhardt in the second battle of Ragnarok. In this fight, Bukak, the retired admiral of the alliance, came back out of retirement, and his wife, he was living the happy retired life the way the Yang Wenli wanted to, at least. But his wife, I guess, I could tell from the look on her face that yeah, he's back, and this could be it for him, because there's always a danger when you leave for war. And he puts up a great fight against Reinhardt's fortress. They fought in essentially what Bukak did is his strategy was to take advantage of the geographical position, and so they used like star storms to their advantage, and he put up a very good fight. For being a small fleet, they took out a lot of Reinhardt's forces. However, it was just too much for them. There were too many ships on Reinhardt's side, and they were overcome, they were overtaken, and they knew it was happening. They knew that this was the end, but they wanted to put the best fight possible. At the end, they're completely surrounded, and Reinhardt gives Bukak a chance to surrender, but unsurprisingly, he refused, and they had to shoot them all down and kill all of them. And Bukak dies, and the alliance is destroyed. Afterwards, Julian is reunited with Yang Wenli, and he shares the data that he got from Earth. And then Yang Wenli finds out about Bukak's death, and Yang Wenli was so enraged with the death of Bukak that he crushes his cup, and hot tea ends up getting all over his hands, burning him, and he's just so mad about what happened to Bukak, he doesn't care. And Frederica has to attend to his hand because he has burn damage. And I think that covers the majority. And we get to know a written Rose, what's her name? Walter's daughter with the red hair comes out. Her and Julian have something that's gonna happen between them. I think that's where I'm at right now. There's gonna be a new confrontation between Yang Wenli's part and Reinhardt's part, and Rubinsky is back to instigate them. And that should be where I'm at right now. Besides that, there are other great episodes. One thing I really like about the episodes or the show is that when they have a documentary episode, or when they talk about the history of the Galactic Empire, the Earth, or the Free Alliance, it's like the most fascinating stories of power and corruption, assassination, and the death and genocide. It's fascinating. I really love this series, and I really like where it's going. I'm still about to finish season 3 and finish with season 4. I need to make 1 or 2 more videos before I wrap it up doing my full analysis. That's all I have.